She had always been curious about the world around her, quietly watching and learning from the people and experiences she came across every day. Even though she appeared ordinary to most, there was a spark inside her, a kind of quiet energy that pushed her to try new things even when others doubted her. She lived in a small town where life moved slowly, and everyone knew everyone else. People often judged by appearances and past experiences, and to them, she was just someone experimenting, learning, and not yet ready to shine. Her mornings began early, with the soft light of dawn creeping through the thin curtains of her room. She would sit at the small table by the window, notebook in hand, jotting down ideas, thoughts, and sometimes small sketches. She had a notebook for everything, and each page carried a tiny piece of her curiosity. Sometimes she would glance outside at the quiet streets and imagine herself stepping beyond the familiar corners of her town, doing something big, something unexpected. But those were only dreams she kept to herself. She had started learning something new recently. It could have been anything, a skill that seemed out of reach, something that made her feel vulnerable because she had no experience. She had chosen it not because anyone told her to, but because it called to her in a way she couldn't ignore. She had watched tutorials, read books, and spent countless hours practicing in solitude. First, it was frustrating. Her hands would tremble, her voice would falter, and the results were always far from perfect. She would sigh, rub her eyes, and think maybe this wasn't for her. But then, something inside refused to let her quit. She would pick herself up and start again, learning from every mistake, slowly improving, though it felt painfully slow. Her friends and neighbors often noticed her spending long hours at her practice space, but they didn't take her seriously. They would smile politely, sometimes offer advice she didn't ask for, and often assume she wouldn't last long. It wasn't that they wanted to discourage her. It was just that they had seen many try and fail. They saw her as someone in the early stages, someone who was experimenting, not someone who could create a real impact. Their doubts were unspoken but visible in their expressions, in the half-smiles and raised eyebrows. Despite this, she remained focused. She had small victories that no one else saw. When she managed to perfect a single movement, play a single note correctly, or understand a tricky concept, her heart would race with excitement. She would pause, take a deep breath, and smile, feeling a sense of accomplishment that the world around her could not measure. These small wins were enough to keep her going, to remind her that the journey was just as important as any outcome. Her family was supportive in their quiet way. They noticed her dedication and offered gentle encouragement, but they, too, were cautious. They wanted her to succeed but didn't want to see her disappointed. She understood their concern, but she also knew that no one could experience the thrill of learning what she felt inside. She had to find her own way, stumble and rise on her own. That was part of the adventure. There were days when she doubted herself fiercely. She would practice for hours and feel that nothing was improving. Her confidence would waver, and the fear of failure would creep in. On those days, she would step outside, feel the cool breeze on her face, and remind herself that learning was a process, not a test to be passed instantly. She would watch children playing, animals moving freely, and the world seemed to whisper patience and persistence. Slowly, she would return to her practice with renewed determination. She had a routine that helped her keep going. Mornings were for learning new techniques, afternoons for practicing what she already knew, and evenings for reflection. Sometimes, she would record herself, watch the footage, and notice the tiny details she could improve. It was tedious work, but she loved it. Every session was a chance to discover something new about herself and her abilities. Even though the progress was slow, she found joy in the journey. Her friends sometimes asked why she was investing so much time in something that seemed so uncertain. They would say, "Why don't you focus on things that are easier or more guaranteed?" She would smile and shake her head. It wasn't about guarantees. It was about passion, about discovering what she was capable of. She knew that if she stopped because others doubted her, she would never know the strength she had hidden inside. In her quiet town, evenings were the time when she felt most alive. The streets were empty, the air calm, and the world seemed to hold its breath. She would step outside with her notebook or her practice tool, and under the fading light, she would immerse herself completely. Mistakes didn't matter. Only the effort mattered. She had learned to embrace failure as part of the process, a stepping stone to improvement. Each time she stumbled, she picked herself up and tried again, stronger and more aware. People around her continued to see her as just someone learning. They didn't notice the small breakthroughs, the moments of clarity, or the depth of her dedication. But she didn't mind. She knew that real growth didn't need an audience. It was quiet, invisible, and personal. She cherished the feeling of discovering her own potential, one small step at a time. There were moments when she imagined herself standing on a stage, performing in front of a crowd, showing what she had learned. At first, it felt impossible, a dream too far away. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, that dream began to feel more real. She would practice imagining the scene, hearing the applause in her mind, feeling the excitement and nervousness at the same time. It gave her energy, something tangible to reach for. One evening, she sat by the window looking out at the sunset. She reflected on how far she had come, even if no one else had noticed. She remembered the first day she tried, the mistakes, the frustration, the fear, and now the quiet confidence growing inside her. She realized that learning wasn't about proving herself to others. It was about proving to herself that she could grow, adapt, and overcome. She didn't know what the future held, and that uncertainty sometimes scared her. But she had learned to embrace fear as a companion rather than an enemy. Fear reminded her that she was pushing boundaries, stepping into the unknown, and trying something new. She had come to understand that the journey of learning was filled with both doubt and discovery, struggle and triumph, and she was ready to continue, no matter what anyone else thought. Her story at that moment was quiet and personal. It didn't make headlines and it didn't draw attention. But inside her, a fire was growing, fueled by curiosity, dedication, and resilience. She knew that one day, perhaps sooner than she expected, that fire would shine beyond her private space, and the world would see the talent and passion that had been quietly growing all along. Until then, she would continue learning, continuing to embrace mistakes, victories, and every small step along the way. Every day was a new opportunity to improve, to explore, and to understand herself better. The small town around her might not see the effort, and friends might dismiss it as a passing interest, but she carried on with quiet determination. Each practice session, each note, each movement, each thought recorded in her notebook was a brick in the foundation of something greater. She believed in the value of learning, in the beauty of growing quietly, and in the power of persistence. And with that belief, she faced each day with hope, courage, and an unstoppable desire to discover just how far she could go. She had been quietly improving her skills for months, learning more with each day, yet no one outside her small circle of family noticed her efforts. The town around her seemed to move at a slower pace, and opportunities for her to show what she had learned were rare. One day, she heard about an event that would change everything. There was a local gathering, a place where people from nearby towns came to showcase their talents, and for the first time, she felt the possibility of performing in front of a crowd. The thought filled her with excitement and anxiety at the same time. It was exactly the kind of challenge she had been imagining, yet the reality felt daunting. At first, she hesitated. Her mind raced with doubts. She thought of all the ways she could fail, of all the mistakes that could be seen by hundreds of people. The fear of embarrassment made her pause. She had never performed outside the privacy of her home. What if she stumbled? What if her hard work was not enough? Her stomach twisted with nervous energy. She almost decided to skip the event, convincing herself that she could keep learning in private, away from prying eyes. But a small voice inside her reminded her of all the months of practice, of every struggle she had overcome. That voice told her that she could not let fear dictate her choices. Encouraged by that inner voice, she decided to take the first step. She talked to her family about the event, sharing her hesitation and excitement. They were supportive but cautious. They reminded her that it would not be easy and that she might face criticism. But they also expressed pride in her dedication and told her that taking the chance was a brave step. Their words reassured her, giving her the courage to commit to participating. She knew that even if things did not go perfectly, she would learn something invaluable from the experience. The days leading up to the event were filled with intense preparation. She practiced for hours, repeating the same movements, notes, or phrases until they felt natural. Every mistake she made became a lesson, and every small improvement built her confidence. She recorded herself, watched the footage, and analyzed each moment carefully. She noticed weaknesses and worked to fix them, and she celebrated even the smallest improvements. The process was exhausting but invigorating. Her mind was focused, and her body was learning to follow what her heart and mind imagined. Outside her practice space, life continued as usual. Friends asked her questions about her plans, and most were skeptical. They could not understand why she was investing so much effort into something that seemed uncertain. Some suggested easier paths or more practical choices, but she politely smiled and carried on. Their doubts did not affect her resolve. She had learned to focus on her own journey, to measure success by her own growth rather than by the expectations of others. It was a lesson she had embraced quietly, but now it was more important than ever. As the day of the event approached, nerves began to build. She found herself imagining the scene repeatedly. She pictured the audience, the stage, and the moment when she would step into the spotlight. Sometimes the vision was thrilling, other times it was terrifying. She could feel her heart racing and her hands trembling at the thought of the crowd's gaze. But with each practice session, she reminded herself that she was ready. She had prepared as best as she could, and she had to trust her abilities. Fear was no longer an enemy. It was a sign that she was about to do something meaningful. The morning of the event arrived, and she woke early, filled with anticipation. The streets were busier than usual, and the air carried a mix of excitement and nervous energy. She packed her things carefully, double-checked her notes, and rehearsed in her mind one last time. Her family walked her to the venue, offering quiet words of encouragement. Their presence was grounding, giving her a sense of comfort amid the rising tension. Arriving at the venue, she was greeted by a bustling crowd and the hum of activity. People were preparing for their performances, sharing tips, and laughing nervously. She found a quiet corner and took a deep breath, letting her mind settle. She observed the other performers, some confident and experienced, others clearly nervous like her. It was a mixture of talent and hesitation, and it reminded her that everyone had started somewhere. No one was born perfect. Every skilled person had a journey of learning, mistakes, and practice. This thought strengthened her resolve. When it was her turn to perform, she felt her pulse quicken. Stepping onto the stage, she saw the audience for the first time. Hundreds of eyes watched her, and for a moment, her nerves threatened to overwhelm her. But she took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a brief second, and remembered all the months of preparation. She told herself that this was her moment, that she had worked tirelessly for this opportunity. She opened her eyes and began. The first moments were tentative. Her movements were careful, her voice soft, her confidence fragile. She stumbled slightly, but she did not stop. Each second brought her closer to a rhythm, a flow that she had cultivated through endless practice. The audience began to respond, not with overwhelming applause yet, but with attention, leaning forward in curiosity. She felt herself relaxing, letting go of fear, and immersing fully in the performance. The months of learning at home were now coming to life, and she felt a thrill she had never known before. Midway through, something changed. Her movements became fluid, her expressions natural, and her confidence radiated. The audience's attention shifted from polite curiosity to genuine interest. She noticed smiles, nods, and quiet murmurs of appreciation. Every part of her practice came together, every hour of dedication, every small victory, every stumble she had overcome. She realized she was doing more than just performing. She was sharing a piece of herself with the world. The energy of the crowd fueled her, and she felt an unstoppable flow. When the performance ended, there was a moment of silence, as if the audience collectively realized what they had just witnessed. Then, the applause came, hesitant at first, then growing louder, filling the room. People who had doubted her now looked surprised, impressed, and genuinely moved. Her heart soared with joy, not because she had won or been praised, but because she had faced her fears and succeeded on her own terms. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment that no words could fully capture. After the performance, she was approached by people she had never met, offering congratulations and compliments. Some were amazed by her skill, some were curious about her journey, and others simply wanted to know how she had managed to perform so confidently despite being new to it. She shared her story briefly, emphasizing that it had been a process of learning, practice, and persistence. The excitement of the crowd and the recognition of her efforts reinforced a lesson she had quietly embraced for months. Growth is not always visible, but dedication always matters. That evening, walking home, she reflected on the experience. She felt proud, not because she had impressed others, but because she had proven to herself that she could rise to a challenge. The fear that had once held her back had transformed into a sense of accomplishment. She realized that stepping out of her comfort zone, despite doubt and uncertainty, was one of the most rewarding experiences of her life. Her journey was far from over, but this day marked a turning point, a moment where her hidden potential began to shine for the first time. The event became a memory she would cherish forever. It reminded her that opportunities often require courage and that growth comes from action, not just preparation. She knew she would face more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and struggle, but she also knew that she had the inner strength to meet them. She had learned the value of perseverance, the importance of trusting herself, and the joy that comes from turning learning into action. And with that understanding, she looked forward to the next step in her journey, ready to continue exploring, learning, and sharing her talent with the world. After her first public performance, she felt a mix of exhilaration and uncertainty. The applause and recognition had been thrilling, but beneath it, a new challenge began to form. The excitement of her initial success brought expectations, both from others and herself. She knew that in order to grow, she had to push further, learn more, and face challenges she had never encountered before. The journey that had once been quiet and private was now entering a new stage, where each step mattered more than ever. She returned home and tried to capture the lessons from her first performance. While there was pride in what she had achieved, she could see clearly where she needed improvement. Certain movements were still not smooth, some notes or gestures were inconsistent, and her confidence wavered in unexpected moments. These details, small to anyone else, were glaringly obvious to her. She realized that being noticed was only the beginning. Mastering her skill required persistence, focus, and humility. It was no longer enough to perform once. She had to keep evolving. Practicing became harder than before. The initial joy she had felt now came with pressure. Every session was a test, every mistake a reminder that progress was ongoing. Sometimes she felt overwhelmed by the weight of her own expectations. She would sit quietly, frustrated by her inability to perfect certain aspects of her skill. Tears would come unbidden, her body tense from hours of practice, her mind spinning with doubts. The thought of failing again, this time with a crowd watching, loomed over her like a shadow. Yet, in those moments of struggle, she found a quiet determination that had not been present before. She learned that setbacks were part of the journey, not an end. She faced criticism from a few who had seen her performance. Not harsh, but constructive, pointing out flaws she had already noticed herself. First, the words stung. She wanted to defend herself, to ignore their suggestions. But after reflection, she realized that their input was valuable. Listening without judgment became a new skill she had to cultivate. She took notes, made small adjustments, and gradually incorporated the feedback into her practice. It was a delicate balance, maintaining confidence while accepting that there was always more to learn. The days blurred together as she trained relentlessly. She experimented with new techniques, pushed herself to master difficult movements, and tested her limits repeatedly. Some days were discouraging, where nothing seemed to go right, and frustration threatened to overwhelm her. On these days, she would step outside, walk along the quiet streets of her town, and let her mind wander. She observed the resilience of people around her, the way life continued despite challenges. Watching children play, seeing birds take flight, or noticing the sun set behind the hills reminded her that growth was natural and gradual. This perspective helped her regain focus and return to practice with renewed energy. There were moments when she questioned herself deeply. She would think about how others had quickly mastered similar skills while she struggled for months. The comparisons hurt, but she learned to use them as motivation instead of discouragement. She reminded herself that her journey was unique, and progress could not be measured by anyone else's pace. Each small improvement was a victory, even if invisible to the outside world. Slowly, she began to embrace the process itself, finding satisfaction in effort, discipline, and persistence. Her family noticed the intensity of her focus. They would ask if she was overworking herself, worried that her body and mind might tire. She reassured them, but they could see the strain. It was not easy for her to balance her daily responsibilities with the rigorous practice she had set for herself. She learned to manage her time meticulously, prioritizing tasks, and carving out space for both practice and rest. It became clear to her that discipline was as important as talent. Hard work, patience, and consistency were becoming her foundation. As weeks turned into months, she faced her first major setback. An important local event was approaching, and she had planned to participate. But during practice, she made a critical mistake that shook her confidence. It was a technical error, one she had thought she had mastered. The fear of failure resurfaced, stronger than before. She considered withdrawing from the event, worried that she was not ready. The thought of letting herself and others down felt heavy. For the first time, the idea of quitting crossed her mind. The disappointment was intense, and for a while, she struggled to find the courage to continue. After a few days of reflection, she realized that avoiding the challenge would not solve anything. She reminded herself of the reasons she had started this journey: curiosity, passion, and the desire to grow. She knew that setbacks were not signs of weakness but opportunities to learn and adapt. Determined, she returned to practice, breaking down the error into smaller parts and addressing each component carefully. Progress was slow, but each corrected mistake became a small triumph. The process required patience and persistence, and she learned to celebrate tiny victories along the way. During this period, she discovered new strategies to improve. She sought advice from experienced individuals, watched tutorials she had previously avoided, and experimented with approaches she had never considered. The learning curve was steep, and some ideas failed, but others worked remarkably well. She realized that failure was not the opposite of success but part of the path to it. The more she embraced challenges, the more resilient she became. Her confidence began to grow again, grounded in experience rather than hope alone. Alongside the technical struggles, emotional challenges were equally pressing. Doubts often crept in, whispering that she was not good enough, that her efforts were futile. She found herself comparing her journey to others and feeling inadequate. But slowly she cultivated inner strength. Meditation, long walks, and quiet reflection helped her manage anxiety and stress. She learned to focus on the present moment, on what she could control, rather than worrying about outcomes. This shift in mindset was as important as any skill she had learned physically. She also began to mentor herself in a new way, observing her own progress with both honesty and kindness. Instead of criticizing herself for mistakes, she analyzed them objectively and planned steps for improvement. Every session ended with reflection, and she noted how far she had come. These small practices strengthened her resilience and allowed her to face new challenges with a calmer, more focused mind. Each struggle became a lesson, each failure a stepping stone. Despite the difficulties, she found moments of joy in her work. A movement perfected, a note held cleanly, or a gesture executed smoothly brought immense satisfaction. These moments reminded her why she started this journey in the first place. The process was difficult, sometimes painful, but it was also fulfilling in ways she could not fully explain. She felt a deep connection to her own growth, a sense of purpose that kept her going even when the path was hard. Her friends and neighbors continued to see her efforts, but most still underestimated her potential. Some expressed concern, others curiosity, but very few recognized the depth of her dedication. She had learned not to seek validation externally. Her progress was for herself and she measured it by her own standards. Yet, she could feel a subtle shift in perception. People began to notice small improvements, the confidence in her movements, the precision in her performance. Slowly, she realized that persistence does not go entirely unnoticed, even if recognition is delayed. The weeks leading to the next public performance were intense. She practiced for hours, faced new challenges, and overcame setbacks with determination. Fear, doubt, and anxiety were constant companions, but so were resilience, discipline, and hope. Every day brought new lessons, new improvements, and new reasons to keep going. She had learned that true growth was not linear, that success was built on countless small struggles, and that resilience was more valuable than immediate applause. By the time the day of the event arrived, she was ready in a way she had never been before. The months of struggle, self-doubt, and perseverance had strengthened her skills and confidence. She knew that mistakes might happen, but she was prepared to face them and continue. She understood that her journey was about more than just performance. It was about courage, persistence, and the ability to rise after every setback. The struggles she had faced were not obstacles but preparation for the moment when she would truly shine. The day of the big event arrived with a soft, golden morning. She woke with a mixture of excitement and nerves that made her heart race and her hands feel slightly cold. Months of preparation, countless hours of practice, and numerous setbacks had led to this moment. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made her feel comfortable and confident. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of all the progress she had made and the strength she had developed through struggle. Arriving at the venue, she felt a wave of energy from the bustling crowd. People were arriving from nearby towns, families and friends gathered together, and performers were moving back and forth, preparing for their moments on stage. The atmosphere was alive with anticipation. She found a quiet corner and closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. She reminded herself that she had faced challenges before, and this was just another stage in her journey. As she warmed up, she could hear the chatter of the audience, the laughter of children, and the occasional sound of instruments or props being prepared. Her nerves tickled her stomach, but she let them remind her that she was about to do something meaningful. Each deep breath she took helped to calm her mind, and she visualized herself performing confidently. The months of struggle, practice, and growth had prepared her to face this moment with courage. When the time came for her to step on stage, she felt a surge of adrenaline. The spotlight hit her gently, and she saw hundreds of eyes focused on her. A moment of fear threatened to freeze her, but she quickly reminded herself that she had prepared, that she had worked tirelessly to reach this point. She took a deep breath and began. Her first movements were cautious, careful, as if testing the space and the attention of the audience. She stumbled slightly at first, a minor mistake that made her heart skip, but she did not let it stop her. Slowly, her confidence began to build. Each gesture became more fluid, each movement more precise. Her voice, previously hesitant, gained clarity and strength. The audience started leaning forward, watching intently, sensing the transformation taking place. She felt a rhythm, a flow that had been developed through months of dedication and countless hours of practice. The nervous energy that had once threatened to hold her back now fueled her, giving her movements a grace and power that she had only dreamed of before. Midway through her performance, a change occurred. She realized that she was no longer performing just for herself or to prove her abilities. She was sharing a part of herself with everyone present. Every practice session, every setback, every small victory had led to this moment, and now it was alive and visible. The audience reacted instinctively, leaning in, their eyes wide, some whispering in amazement. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of connection with the people who had come to witness her journey. The performance flowed seamlessly. She moved with confidence, precision, and emotion, each step, note, or gesture carefully crafted yet appearing effortless. The months of private learning and persistent effort had built a foundation strong enough to withstand the pressure of the stage. She noticed smiles, nods, and quiet murmurs of appreciation. For the first time, she felt the joy of being understood and admired for her true abilities. Her heart swelled with pride, not just for the applause but for knowing that she had transformed fear and doubt into beauty and skill. As she reached the climax of her performance, the audience responded with visible awe. Hands clapped, heads tilted in admiration, and eyes shone with surprise. People who had assumed she was just learning were now seeing a talent that surpassed expectation. The moment was surreal. The energy of the crowd, their genuine amazement, and the realization of her own growth created an experience that was deeply moving. She felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and fulfillment. All the effort, struggle, and perseverance had led to this extraordinary moment. When the performance ended, a brief silence hung in the air, as if everyone collectively absorbed what they had witnessed. Then, the applause erupted, loud and enthusiastic. People rose from their seats, cheering and clapping, some whistling in appreciation. She stood there for a moment, taking it in, feeling the magnitude of her accomplishment. She had not just performed. She had connected, inspired, and amazed. Her journey from a quiet learner to a confident performer had come alive in front of hundreds of eyes. Afterward, she was approached by many in the crowd, offering congratulations, praise, and curiosity about her journey. People asked questions about how she had prepared, how she had overcome nervousness, and what motivated her to persist. She smiled, sharing bits of her story and emphasizing the importance of dedication, resilience, and self-belief. The experience was validating, not because of fame or recognition, but because she had demonstrated to herself and others that effort, perseverance, and courage could produce extraordinary results. The performers who had been there alongside her also expressed admiration. Some were inspired by her determination, others impressed by the skill and fluidity she had achieved in such a short time. Even those who had been skeptical before recognized the growth, the depth of practice, and the emotion she had brought to the stage. It was a powerful reminder that persistence and dedication could transform a quiet beginner into someone who could command attention and inspire others. Walking off the stage, she felt a sense of peace and accomplishment that she had never known. The weight of fear, self-doubt, and anxiety that had once been constant companions was now replaced by pride, confidence, and joy. She realized that the performance was not the end of her journey but a milestone in an ongoing process of growth. Each step, each practice session, each challenge had contributed to this moment of triumph. The applause and recognition were meaningful, but the internal transformation was even more significant. That evening, she returned home, still buzzing with the memory of the performance. She sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the long nights of practice, the setbacks, the doubts, and the moments when she had questioned herself. Each memory was a reminder of her resilience and strength. She felt grateful for every challenge she had faced, knowing that each one had prepared her to shine when it mattered most. The experience taught her valuable lessons about herself and the world. She learned that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, perseverance, and courage were essential. She understood that failure and mistakes were not endpoints but opportunities to learn and grow. Most importantly, she realized that believing in herself, even when others doubted her, was the key to unlocking her true potential. The journey had been long and difficult, but the reward, the feeling of transforming fear into accomplishment, was worth every struggle. In the days that followed, the memory of the performance continued to inspire her. She received messages of encouragement, people sharing how moved they had been, how impressed they were by her skill and confidence. While she appreciated the recognition, she knew that the real triumph was personal. She had faced her fears, tested her limits, and revealed her hidden talent. It was a moment that would stay with her forever, a reminder of what was possible when determination and passion combined. As she resumed her daily practice, she carried the experience with her. The crowd, the applause, and the recognition were no longer sources of pressure, but reminders of her growth and potential. She approached each session with renewed energy, curiosity, and focus, understanding that mastery was an ongoing journey. Every challenge, setback, and success was part of the path she had chosen. And with that mindset, she continued to learn, explore, and push herself beyond the limits she once thought existed. The performance was a turning point, marking the transformation from a quiet learner to someone capable of amazing those around her. It was proof that persistence, courage, and passion could overcome doubt and fear. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more opportunities to grow, and more moments where she would be tested. But she also knew that she had the strength, skill, and resilience to face whatever came next. The crowd had witnessed a glimpse of her true potential, and she had discovered it for herself, in a way that would forever shape her journey. After the performance that had amazed the crowd, she felt a mixture of exhilaration and calm satisfaction. The applause and recognition had been incredible, but the deeper feeling was one of personal triumph. She walked home slowly that evening, letting the cool air wash over her, reflecting on everything she had been through to reach this point. Each step reminded her of the long nights of practice, the setbacks, and the moments when she had doubted herself. She realized that the true reward was not just the applause, but the journey itself and the growth that came from it. Her family was waiting for her when she returned home. They greeted her with warm smiles and hugs, proud of what she had accomplished. They asked questions about the performance, about how she had felt on stage, and what it was like to hear the crowd react. She spoke honestly, sharing both the excitement and the nervousness she had experienced. Her family listened with admiration, knowing how much effort she had put into her work and how far she had come since she first began learning quietly at home. Over the next few days, the performance became a topic of conversation in the town. People who had once underestimated her now spoke with curiosity and respect. Friends who had been skeptical before asked how she had improved so quickly and what motivated her to continue. Some wanted to learn from her approach, hoping to find inspiration for their own challenges. She answered with humility, explaining that dedication, patience, and the willingness to learn from mistakes had been the keys to her growth. She wanted others to understand that success was not just about talent, but about persistence and belief in oneself. Despite the recognition, she remained grounded. She continued her practice as before, knowing that improvement was a continuous process. Every day brought new opportunities to refine her skills, explore new techniques, and push her limits further. She embraced each challenge with determination, understanding that the journey was ongoing and that mastery was never truly complete. The lessons she had learned through struggle and perseverance now guided her approach to each new task. She also found joy in helping others who were just beginning their journeys. People came to her for advice, curious about how she had grown from a quiet learner into someone capable of amazing a crowd. She shared her experiences openly, emphasizing the importance of practice, resilience, and believing in oneself even when others doubted. She encouraged them to embrace mistakes as learning opportunities and to approach challenges with patience. Seeing others gain confidence and improve under her guidance brought her a deep sense of fulfillment. One day, while reflecting on her journey, she realized how much she had changed. The person who had once doubted her own abilities, who had hesitated to perform in front of even a small audience, had grown into someone confident, skilled, and capable of inspiring others. She understood that each struggle, each mistake, and each small victory had contributed to this transformation. It was a powerful reminder that personal growth often happens quietly, away from the eyes of the world, before it is finally recognized. The experience also taught her the value of patience and persistence. She remembered the early days of her learning, when progress was slow and setbacks felt overwhelming. Those difficult moments had been essential, shaping her resilience and determination. She realized that there were no shortcuts to meaningful achievement, and that every small effort mattered. Each step forward, no matter how minor it seemed at the time, had built the foundation for her success. As weeks turned into months, she continued to pursue her passion with renewed energy. She sought out new opportunities to perform, to learn, and to challenge herself. The memory of the crowd's amazement stayed with her, a reminder of what was possible when preparation, courage, and determination met opportunity. She knew that every performance, every effort, and every practice session was a chance to grow, to inspire, and to learn more about herself. Her story began to inspire others beyond her town. People who heard about her journey recognized the universal lessons it carried, that determination and dedication can turn even a quiet learner into someone extraordinary, and that obstacles are stepping stones rather than barriers. Messages of encouragement, questions from aspiring learners, and invitations to share her experiences became part of her new reality. She felt humbled by the impact her journey had on others and grateful for the opportunity to contribute positively to their growth. Through all of this, she remained reflective and mindful of her progress. She kept her notebooks, continuing to write down ideas, observations, and insights. She recorded each small achievement, celebrated the tiny victories, and analyzed moments where she could improve. This practice of reflection became a cornerstone of her growth, helping her maintain focus, stay motivated, and appreciate the journey as much as the outcomes. She understood that success was not just a moment but a continuous process of learning and evolving. Her relationships with friends and family also deepened. They saw her transformation not only in skill but in character. The confidence, patience, and resilience she developed through her journey became evident in every aspect of her life. They admired the way she faced challenges calmly and approached opportunities with focus and determination. Her story became a shared inspiration, reminding them that growth and achievement were possible for anyone willing to commit to their path. One afternoon, she sat quietly in her favorite spot by the window, looking out at the streets of her town. She thought about how far she had come, from the timid beginner practicing in solitude to someone who could captivate and inspire others. She reflected on the countless hours of practice, the tears, the doubts, and the triumphs. A sense of peace and accomplishment filled her, accompanied by a quiet excitement for what lay ahead. She knew the journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever challenges and opportunities awaited. She also realized the importance of self-belief. The moments when she had doubted herself, when fear threatened to hold her back, had been crucial in shaping her resilience. Learning to trust her abilities, even when others questioned them, was one of the most valuable lessons she had learned. This inner confidence allowed her to approach new challenges with courage, to face setbacks with determination, and to embrace opportunities with enthusiasm. She understood that believing in oneself was a key ingredient for success, more powerful than any external validation. As she continued to practice and perform, she embraced the philosophy that growth was never truly complete. Each performance was a new chance to learn, each practice session an opportunity to improve. She accepted that mistakes would happen, that setbacks were inevitable, and that the path to mastery was ongoing. This mindset allowed her to remain motivated, resilient, and focused, regardless of external circumstances or opinions. She approached each day with curiosity and determination, eager to see how far she could go. Her story became more than just her own experience. It became a lesson for anyone willing to listen. She spoke at small gatherings, shared her journey with aspiring learners, and wrote about her experiences, emphasizing the importance of dedication, patience, and self-belief. She encouraged others to embrace challenges, learn from failures, and persist in the face of doubt. Her message was clear. True growth and achievement come from commitment, courage, and the willingness to continue, even when progress seems slow or difficult. Over time, she noticed the changes within herself were not just in skill, but in perspective and character. She approached life with greater patience, resilience, and empathy. The lessons learned from her journey, persistence, self-belief, embracing mistakes, and celebrating small victories, became guiding principles in all areas of her life. She felt empowered, knowing that she had the strength to face challenges, the ability to inspire others, and the wisdom to continue growing. The journey that began quietly at home had transformed her into someone capable of achieving extraordinary things. Looking back, she realized that every step, from the earliest days of practice to the applause of the crowd, had been part of a larger journey. The quiet determination, the setbacks, the small victories, and the moments of self-doubt had all contributed to her growth. She understood that her story was not just about a single performance, but about the process of learning, evolving, and discovering her true potential. It was a reminder that with dedication, courage, and belief in oneself, anyone could turn quiet beginnings into remarkable achievements. Her journey had come full circle, from the shy learner practicing alone to the confident performer who had amazed a crowd and inspired many. Yet, she knew that the path ahead was full of possibilities, challenges, and opportunities to grow even further. She embraced this reality with excitement, curiosity, and determination. Each day offered a chance to improve, to explore, and to share her abilities with the world. And with every step, she carried the lessons of her past, the confidence of her achievements, and the promise of what she could become in the future.